I work with Imani Development. It's a consultancy company, but it has an asset lock into a foundation. And we work on the Business Innovation Facility, a DFID project, which has a team of different organisations working to promote and support inclusive business projects. One of them also is Challenges Worldwide, so Ewan's here today and he'll be following up with some questions afterwards as well. But I would like to start by saying, well, what is an inclusive business partnership? There are many definitions, many definitions of what we're talking about here. I would say that it's one view of business models which include the poor and can be catalysed or improved to produce pro-poor outcomes. Now that's trying to not weight it too heavily ideologically between whether it's business as usual, which I think we've seen is maybe there's a question as to whether business as usual is an acceptable premise at the moment, or whether it's about helping businesses become more inclusive by drawing on the expertise of NGOs and other institutions. But I believe that they can all play a part in developing inclusive business models, and they often target the base of the pyramid. So we're talking about the very poorest, often producers of products that can't reach the market, but also they can be consumers of products as well, and they can't find access to those products. There are various websites you can look at to learn more about this, but there's the Markets for the Poor. Making markets work for the poor is one broader concept which kind of takes us a little into policy area. But the Business Innovation Facility is focusing on the firm level. So it's engaging with individual business projects and catalysing them to have good inclusive outcomes. And we've heard as well that Michael Porter, business guru, has coined the phrase creating shared value. So interesting to hear Brendan's point on CSR, and almost in opposition to CSR is CSV. So it's looking at core business activities, not just corporate social responsibility. I think that's a helpful distinction to start off with, but actually it's a spectrum. It blends. As Brendan has pointed out, strategically it's important to work in certain areas because you have high expertise in certain areas as a company, so it makes it obvious that you would want to be using them when you're engaging in CSR, and that starts you on the spectrum with CSV. So it's not a firm distinction. A couple of examples. I think we could have included an energy example as well. We're starting an energy project on hydropower in Malawi as well. But the usual suspect in inclusive business is M-Pesa, which is a Kenyan business model which is using remote mobile phone payments and transactions. So you have a small account with M-Pesa and you can transfer money between people using phones. That was an example of a project that was match funded between DFID and Vodafone. So it goes back to 2003. They put in just under £1 million each, developed this joint venture, and it's transformed the financial market for poor people in Kenya. Now, when we look at M-Pesa, it's particularly difficult actually to understand what the impacts are of that, because we're talking about something that's in a way transformational. So it's not a simple matter of listing the number of people that are engaging with M-Pesa or our members. It's got much wider benefits, but actually they're quite hard to pin down, and they happen over a long period of time. So 2003, we're now 2011. The benefits are still being felt and still being understood. So we shouldn't just assume that this is going to be a straightforward area. AfriNut is the project that I would like to just comment on briefly, because we've been involved in setting that up under the Business Innovation Facility. It's a joint venture for processing and purchasing and exporting ground nuts or peanuts from Malawi. And there's a joint venture between NASFAM as a farmers association, Twin Trading as an ethical trading company, Cordaid as a donor, and Exagris as a commercial farming company in Malawi, got together have invested together to start a new joint venture. Now that was brokered by Challenges Worldwide. Putting those investors together, getting them round the same table, answering all of their numerous questions is a big challenge. So from the start, that's a key one. Here we've got a schematic looking at how the Business Innovation Facility would view a business plan. So, hopefully this mirrors people's sort of traditional business planning. There's scoping, design and partnering. Again, that's where the real meat happens often, is the partnering section. A pilot, then rollout, and you should have commercial return. That's perfectly fine and acceptable. And it should be able to go to scale, hopefully. But there should also be development outcomes that we can measure and understand. And again, I would hate to suggest that that is a straightforward matter, but it's complicated for any development project, as we know. So what are the results so far from AfriNut? Well, the results are that it's been successful so far. It's been brokered. We have a joint company up and running. It has investors with very different interests in what the outcomes are, but they have got together for delivering a business model. So that's first of all. The know-how that NGOs have is very important for it to work. It wouldn't work if you didn't have that knowledge embedded in NASFAM and twin trading as well, and that ability to understand how to engage with farmers and what an inclusive, really effective inclusive model should look like. But it also needs some business DNA, and I can honestly say that if it didn't have that kind of management approach from Exagris and taking as an ethos into the whole project, it wouldn't have been successful. It's very important that the shareholders or the stakeholders involved have real power to influence how the business is going to look going forward. So again, you can see how a very good understanding of each other needs to be there. And what are the benefits? Well, we're still at early stages, but the benefits seem to be huge. There's going to be a vastly increased amount of exports of groundnuts, hopefully as a result of this. So it's going to be scalable. And also, we can see that people are hopefully going to get increased income from that. And also there are going to be other benefits. We hope that female farmers are going to benefit, but again, looking at that, it's not straightforward. Is the farmer the woman who is working and growing the peanuts, or is it the man who is maybe cycling those peanuts to the market or to finalise the transaction with NASFAM? Just very difficult to know. You can imagine it's a challenge to work out just because someone's name is on the register, are they the real beneficiary? And how long before people benefit? Well, with M-Pesa, there are years and years and years of benefit ahead, and again, it's a transformational product, so it's very difficult to understand really what the long-term impacts are going to be. We know that there is going to be good impact with AfriNut. It might be small at the start, might be gradually increasing, but it's also looking at reinvigorating what is almost a dead industry. So that has a very large impact, and again, NGOs and business need to work together on what's best there. Some big questions, I think, as well, that it throws up. Is it scalable? Well, as I say, yes. Is it replicable? Well, we thought that this model would be a very significant demonstration. It would have a big demonstration effect to the rest of Malawi, particularly different NASFAM models in other commodities, about how you should proceed. You can go to donors and you can ask them to give you money for investment on a plate, or you can engage with other organisations and other institutions and come to what might be a more balanced and more commercially viable model. Actually, there needs to be a bit of a cultural shift still, because that argument is still not won at all. I think some of the NGO partners would see it as a compromise. Having to concede control or equity in a business venture, they kind of begrudge that. They see it as a necessary evil to move forward. So, there needs to be cultural change there as well. But again, we need to remember that there are very different models out there, like the Chinese model of coming in and brokering a business deal with the government and going in and buying the whole lot. So we have to be realistic here that there are different alternate models for developing countries to engage in, and there might be no love lost in terms of saying goodbye to our model. There are big dangers there. I think that other alternate buying mechanisms don't guarantee that a market's going to be reliable. So with the Chinese model, I think that's a big challenge. Are you meeting the compliance issues that are being imposed? And if you don't, are you going to get sales next year, and so on? So that's one factor. Should an NGO be engaging with this type of business model? I would say a wholehearted yes, and I think we're carrying some of that enthusiasm today, that we think that it is worth engaging in because it has good development impact. So if that's what it takes, let's try and engage with it. From the business point of view, one of the views from the selection committee on the Business Innovation Facility was, before we approve this project, who is going to be lying awake at night worrying about this? Because it's really important that someone is. It's not just a project. We want someone really, in a cold sweat, making sure that this is working. So entrepreneurship somewhere in the mechanism needs to be there. So there needs to be that blend of business DNA and NGO desire for impact. I touched on the difficulty of monitoring and evaluation and really measuring that impact. Well, what's the counterfactual? Well, we don't know. I mean, we can start a baseline. We can, before the project, we can try and establish what that's looking like, but it's a business. It's going to change plans, it's going to have to adapt. It's going to be very difficult to see what the impacts are compared to what otherwise would have happened. And a business may be at the point where it needs expertise. It might not even know it needs some expertise that can be added by NGOs. But they may have gone ahead with the plan in some shape or form anyway. So we have to be realistic about what the counterfactual is before we put everyone's hard-earned public money into it. But again, I think that's the negative side. I think that really the positive side is there are very good reasons to put public and donor money into making these projects work. And then finally, partnership. Do you need to share values to share value? I think that's a fundamental one. Currently, there has been traditionally an adversarial relationship between NGOs and business. NGOs have been holding businesses to account, and there's been really, really good reasons for that, which are that the legal frameworks and the monitoring frameworks that we would take for granted in the UK maybe don't exist in somewhere like Malawi, so or many other countries. So in Malawi, if you have the tea industry has been under scrutiny from NGOs to try and eradicate or try and find solutions to child labour, various human rights and employment rights issues. That's been the relationship so far, but this is about partnership. And the question is, do we or should we completely leave aside that kind of checks and balances role that has traditionally existed? I think that there is room for partnership, but we also need to recognise that businesses are operating in a larger society. And I also think that finally, do people share the same values? Is it really important that they do? I don't think it is that important. I think a lot of people do have similar values. Once you get past the shareholder maximization, I think there's a lot of people in business that have genuine aspirations in this area. And I think NGOs recognize that they want to see big change, and they are maybe tired of not having access to those kind of impacts. You can think differently from someone else in a joint venture and make it work. So I think from that basis, it would be great to extend discussions with everyone, and look forward to hearing from everyone else. Thank you.